Hi guys, and welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be discussing juniper branch development, so stick around. Alright guys, so this is something that you guys have been asking for, and also you guys seem to like the whiteboard content. So we're going to do a requested video, which is actually how to develop a juniper branch. Now this is quite a simple process. It's often misunderstood just because of the growth patterns of junipers and the fact that a lot of the time, if you don't do the right things, they will keep that soft, unlignified branching, especially if you're pruning a lot. You don't give the branch a chance to grow, then your juniper's always going to have that unlignified branch. And what I mean by unlignified, it means that it hasn't got that hard woody appearance yet. So it's got that new soft green, flexible growth that doesn't really look like a tree branch. And you don't really get any ramification. So today we're going to go through a few things and talk about how we get branch thickness, how we get branch ramification, and how we get that lignified growth. So let's jump straight into it. So the first thing is branch development. When and how? So the best time for this is obviously spring. And how? We let the branch grow. So as the branch, if you're in development with junipers, 9 times out of 10, if you're doing development right, you'll have your juniper in a nursery growing container, not in a bonsai pot. If we're in development, we want to be in that nursery container. If you're in the nursery container, your tree's not going to look as bare as this. It's going to be full. It's going to have branches everywhere. So what we need to do, this is not a lecture on bonsai development, but let's just say that your juniper that's in the growing container, you've pretty much finished growing the trunk to where you want it to be. Now you can start cutting back your branches on that juniper, because we know with junipers, it's common knowledge that the more foliage that's on the tree, so the more branches, the more foliage, the thicker that trunk's going to grow. So when we're developing the trunk, we really want to keep everything on there that we possibly can, as long as it's not causing problems like inverse taper and swelling in certain sections if you've got multiple branches, that kind of thing. So as much foliage on the tree as we can keep, we get our trunk nice and thick. Now, once we come around to our second stage of development, where we want to start developing our branches, now, this is where we will start cutting back our branches to the spots that we want them. Now, usually, so by this point, usually you've got your thick trunk and you've already got your movement in your trunk. You should have put the movement in the trunk when it was young. So now we've got to the stage, we've got our thick trunk, and now we want to come back and we want to cut back to the branches that we actually want to use in our design. Now usually these will be on the outsides of the curves, and don't forget to have branches on the back as well. So, say here you might have that branch comes from around the back of the tree, and we've got a branch coming this way around the back of the tree, because we want to fill in that depth. We want to have foreground depth, we want to have background depth, and that's what our back branches do. But we've come in and we've selected our branches, we've cut everything else off, we've cut off the branches that are coming right towards us, and we're left with our branches on the outside of our curves and our background branches and everything like that. So the first thing that we want to do is in spring, we want to let these branches grow. Now, we need to be mindful of taper here. So we don't want to do the same technique for every branch on the tree, okay? So anything that's up top, we want to keep cutting back for now. Anything that's down low is what we're going to be concentrating on in the first part of development. So this branch here, what we want to do is we want to let this just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So your tree is going to look a little bit silly for a while. It's not going to represent a bonsai, but that's okay. We're still in development. We're not looking at making a show-ready tree at the moment. We're just looking at doing the proper steps to creating a nice tree. Now, what will happen is the more you let this grow, it's the same science as when we were developing the trunk. The more foliage that we have on this branch, the thicker this branch gets. Make sense? Now, what happens is we want taper. So obviously we're going to let this branch grow the longest, and this one we'll let grow maybe a bit shorter. But in saying that, it's not just that simple. You really got to watch the tree. If this branch is getting too thick and it's looking like it's going to overtake this one, then we really need to cut this back and slow that growth down and let this one keep growing, because we want this one to be the thickest. And then as we go up the tree, we want to be thinner and thinner and thinner. So hopefully what I'm explaining here gives you a good structure work to what to do on the tree. So obviously, while we're letting this one grow and this one grow, all the stuff up top, we're just going to keep cutting it back. Keep cutting it back. Try and keep them branches up the top of the tree nice and thin, because that's what we want up the top of the tree. We want taper. Now, once this branch here reaches its desired thickness, then we can come back in and we can lop it off. Now, one thing to keep in mind with junipers and black pines, those kind of things, usually coniferous material. There may be some outlier trees, but wherever we make the cut site, we have to have some growth behind it. This one here, for example, let's just say we cut this and there's no buds, there's no growth here, we're going to lose that branch, okay? So we always need to make sure that we have growth in behind the cut on our coniferous material. So, now that we've made this cut, we're going to get new buds that shoot off from here, and we can start growing our branch and getting our taper and making it look like this. Now, as I said, the best time for this is in spring, okay? And in spring, well actually, let me back up a little bit. In autumn, we want to come in and we want to feed heavy with a high nitrogen fertilizer. Now, there's probably plenty of times where you've heard in autumn, to use a 0-10-10, so no nitrogen. This is for a different use case. This is where these things don't get explained. So, what we want to do is in autumn, we want to feed that tree up full of nitrogen, because we know nitrogen is the element that's in our fertilizer that causes elongation. So, what we want to do is feed that tree up in autumn, so in spring, it's full of nitrogen and it just comes out of the gates. Comes out of the gates running, okay? And then through spring, we can also keep adding nitrogen. So we can use like a liquid nitrogen once every fortnight, give it a dose of that. That's instant nitrogen for the tree. You can also use an organic fertilizer if you want, but just be mindful that it does take about 4 weeks for those components in the organic fertilizers to break down and actually become available to the tree. So if you're really wanting growth, you can use a liquid inorganic fertilizer. That'll get you off and running. So you let it grow, and this might be for a season, might be for 2 seasons, depending on what you're trying to achieve with your tree. At this point in development, you might have already let this, when you were growing your trunk, you might have already let this branch grow. And this is something that you can do at the start of development with your bottom branches. Just let them grow. And then by the time you get to this point, you might be able to just come in and cut it back and start it all at once. So by knowing this knowledge, you can really start off in the right position as you're developing your juniper. Now, next thing we need to talk about is our branch structure, our shape and our pruning. Now, I'll just get rid of this guy and we'll focus on this. So when it comes to junipers, I'm not going to say this is a hard and fast rule. I'm just going to say this as a guideline, and you take it how you want. You can use it, you don't have to. But generally, when it comes to junipers and conifers in general, this is an overhead view of the branch, but let me just talk about something else for now. When we style a conifer, generally we wire those branches down, okay? So where the shoulder comes off the trunk, the branch goes down. So that's the first thing I'll say. Now, much like our trunk, when we're putting our structure in our juniper, what I usually do is I try and clean the branch up a little bit, because what you're going to have is, you would have seen this, the way junipers grow is just everywhere. Crazy, like this. There's no stopping them. And they've got an opposite growth pattern. So you got a branch this side, you got a branch on the exact opposite side. So with our branch, let's just pretend this is straight for now. I've just come through and, you know, I've wired my branch up, okay? And now it's all bent up like that. Now what am I going to do? I've got to come through and I've got to select my branches. If our trunk, sorry, let me take that back. If our branch is at the thickness that we desired, now we don't need all this foliage on there to help with the thickness. So now we can start selecting our secondary branches. And much like the trunk, we would rather choose the branches that land on the outside of our curves. Okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come through and we're going to get rid of any of the branches that land on the insides of curves. Now once again too, this is just a general guideline. You might have to use a branch that's on the inside of a curve. Okay, this is not a hard and fast rule, but generally if you want the best looking tree and you want those Japanese looking designs, well, this is how you get them. So we make use of any branches that are on the outsides of curves. And let me just get rid of this wire that I've drawn in the middle of the tree here, in the middle of the branch here, so it's not confusing you with lines everywhere. Okay, so now in this situation, what I would do is, to keep the branch healthy, I would keep a couple of branches on there, even ones that I'm not going to use. But for example, I would let this one grow, and I would let this one grow, let this one grow, okay? So, and you can even probably let one in here grow, and then you just keep these ones cut back for now, and let these ones grow out. And these are going to be your secondary branches. Exactly the same thing that we do in development with the trunk and with our first branches. Except now we're moving out on to a branch and we're growing our secondaries. Now, once these start to reach our desired thickness, okay, now these are going to be the same thing. They're going to have all this growth over them. Okay, that's all our little juniper buds and juniper growth, crazy like they are. But now all of this is going to be enough to keep that branch moving forward. Okay, so it's not going to die. We've got to remember with junipers, there's strengths in their foliage, and if we take too much foliage off any given area, even on a branch, we can lose that branch. So that's why we kept these guys. But now we've got all this foliage here, we can come through and take these guys off that we kept, just to keep that branch nice and strong. Okay, so as you can see, now we've got our main branch and we've got our secondary branching, okay? Now, we do the exact same thing that we did here, but on our secondaries. And you can see how this is gonna, keep going. Obviously this branch is a bit straight, I don't know what I was doing here, but let's use this one for an example. So we come through, we get rid of our growth on the insides. We keep a couple of little ones to keep the branch strong. And then we grow out here, grow out here, grow out here. And as you can see, now we're starting to ramify our tree. Now, remember before when I was talking about unlignified growth, the only way to get lignified growth on a juniper is to let these run. Let them run really long. And then what you'll notice is in here, this will start to lignify. As it thickens, it'll get that woody appearance to it. And then at that point, you can cut these back. And then that's where your branch starts. And now you've got that lignified branch that actually looks like a proper tree branch. And then you'll have all this soft new juniper growth on there, the unlignified growth. And then it's just the same process again and again and again and again. And that's how we ramify our branch. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. Leave it down in the comments if I'm making sense or not. So basically that is how we make our juniper branch. And obviously, once we've got all these guys, we can come back in and get rid of all this stuff, because now obviously this is going to have all its own growth. It can take over for the branch. Once again, that'll be like that, that'll be like that, that'll be like that. Same up here. Get rid of all these. And then obviously we come back in and we keep cutting back. As we get out further towards the tip, we'll make these tertiary branches shorter and shorter, obviously. And then, that'll ramify off. And then that'll ramify off. And we just get, shorter and shorter and shorter as we start to go out towards our tips. All right. Now, the fun part. Branch refinement and pad creation. Now, this is the part that people try to jump instantly to with their junipers. They see these big, beautiful trees in Japan. They see these big, beautiful trees that have been created in Europe, in the United States, all around the world. Wherever there's bonsai professionals, there's big, beautiful trees. So what people are trying to do is they're trying to jump straight into creating, a branch. Say we've got our tree like this, and then they see these branches that have got like these these pads kind of like this. And they're trying to jump straight into doing that kind of thing. And it's just not going to work without doing all those previous steps, because you've got to, create your branch and then have it ramify off to another one and just keep creating, okay? You've got to keep creating as much branches as possible, because in the end, what we're going to do, and this next part's going to be a bit hard for me to draw, so I'm really going to have to do my best at explaining it. What we try to do, and what it's usually explained as, is a handshake pattern. If I move my hand there, at the end of the branch. So that way, that's how we create our pad. But remember, not only have we got to have what's called a silhouette on the edge of the branch, but we've also got to have our body that sits at the top. So if you can imagine, this here is our silhouette, okay, down here, and this up here is our body. So when you're looking at the tree from the front, you're not just seeing, a branch that looks like that, flat, you're seeing a branch that looks like that. It's got some body to it, okay? So you got to have your stuff out the front and you got to have your stuff in the background just raised up a little bit. And to get that, you've got to grow multiple branches. So you can place some branches at the back, you can place some branches down the front, you can spread them out and just create a pad. A pad is created with 5, 6, 7 tertiary branches. It's not created with just one branch. It's a building process that you've got to come in every year. And remember in the last step when I said that as we get out towards the end, we create smaller and smaller little branches. Well, this is what creates your pad. As you go out, you're creating smaller and smaller little branches, okay? So this is how you build your pad, and this is how you build your volume within your tree. So that's basically it for this video. I really hope that, I did a good job explaining that to you guys. Let me know down in the comments below. Was that easy to understand? Was there anything that you didn't understand? Ask that in the comments below. I'll do my best to try and clarify anything for you guys. Just remember too that this is just one of the many ways to do things. There's a lot of bonsai artists out there that do things differently. They fertilize differently. They develop differently. This is just my way of doing things. There's lots of professionals out there. So, try and learn from everybody. Don't just take in one thing, take in stuff from everywhere. Try and build your knowledge the best you can like that. Don't forget too that we do have merchandise. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Every sale of merchandise actually helps this YouTube channel. It helps us grow, it helps us buy material to do videos. It helps me pay myself so that I've got the time to do the videos. The more I can pay myself to do this, the more videos I can release. So it just helps. I also do have a Juniper Care ebook, which I'll leave a link to down in the description below. It's only $5.99 and that's Australian dollars for you. So for you guys in America, it'll be even cheaper. So I'll leave a link for that in the description below. If you want to say thank you for doing this video, then you can go over and grab a copy of that. But until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.